Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for a Daily Spark TV. You guys know who I am. I'm Dr. Angela Butts-Chester, and you know what I'd like to do on my show. Say it with me. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. The scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And that's what we want to do today. We want to get you fired up about my guest. I'll be spending time today with Barry Ison, and we'll be talking about his book, Dreams Can Come True, the story of Jacob. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Daily Spark TV.
Good morning, Dr. Angela. Greetings from Canberra.
Thank you so much for joining me. Well, we have a little bit of a tradition around here. Before we get started talking about your book, we realize that not every viewer is familiar with every guest. So we do try to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to those folks that may be a little unfamiliar with you or your work. So first question is just tell a little something about yourself. What makes you you?
Well, I've had a very interesting background. My parents were missionaries, and they went across to India during the war. And so I was born in India. And I went to school up in the Himalayas in a town called Darjeeling. You're probably familiar with Darjeeling tea, where we were surrounded by tea gardens. Then I came back to Australia with my family, and I became a teacher. And I've also worked in various development projects around the world. So a life full of adventure, full of stories.
Mm-hmm. Now, being an author, is that something that you've always wanted to do, or did you find that this was one way for you to share your information, your wisdom with the masses?
Well, it really happened rather unplanned, I would say. I came back, my last posting was in Bangladesh. I came back, I was fairly sick and I was recovering. And I thought I'd do a little bit of writing. And I've joined a program with Hebrew studies. So I was studying Hebrew and various aspects of the Bible, the Torah, and so on. And so this grew and grew and grew. And I became fascinated by the patriarchs and the matriarchs. And then I started investigating about Jacob and Joseph. And I was just so stunned by what amazing people they were, how successful they were. They were just wonderful, wonderful people. So I thought my initial impressions was that Jacob was a deceiver and Joseph was.
I love it. I love it. It's so many authors that I talk to who they say it was not their childhood dream to become an author, but man, once they were introduced to the idea, it has really blossomed and they have become such successful authors just like yourself. I love how God is able to do these amazing things in our lives that we didn't even know was going to happen, but so glad that it definitely did happen. Now, I want you to tell us a little bit about the title of the book, Dreams Can Come True, the story of Jacob. How did you come about that title? Did it come to you first? Did it develop out of the writings? What's the story there?
It came out of the whole fact that Jacob was having dreams all the time, all the way through his life. He was dreaming, and he was getting, every time he was dreaming, it's getting closer and closer to God. And so I thought, yes, your dreams did come true because you became a very, very successful man. I've written a duology. There's a sequel. There's a story of Jacob, and then there's a sequel, the story of Joseph. There's two books.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, when it comes to this particular book, the one about Jacob, would you say that that book is appropriate for someone as young as high school? And I try to ask this question of all of my guests. Is high school okay? So we're talking about someone 16, 17, 18 years old? Or do they need to be college age? Do they need a little bit more life experience to be able to follow along?
Well, no, I think that a high school boy or girl would be very interested in the story. I mean, the story follows the Bible version very, very closely. I quote scripture and so on. So, um, so if the Bible is appropriate for someone to read at any age, then this book would be also appropriate.
I love that answer. So let's clarify even more. Does someone need to have been raised in the faith to be able to follow along? Or does it matter? Perhaps they've just come to Christianity last week. Will they too be able to follow along?
Oh yes, yes. The Bible, the Bible's story in the Bible is quite sparse. There's no detail. So I've taken the bones of the story and I've added detail, and I've given personality, gone into the thoughts and the feelings and emotions of all the characters. So it's something that anybody could pick up and become engrossed upon.
I love that. I love that. Now, we have so many books out there that are written from the biblical perspective. So I know someone's going to say another book about fill in the blank, right? About a particular person in the Bible. But I know that you have taken care to write your book a particular way. Why do you feel that your book is a little different? Or how have you presented the information that makes it fun and exciting for the reader?
Well, I think as it relates to Jacob, um, the story of this amazing person being blessed and guided by God throughout his life, he he becomes a real person. And because when we read the Bible, we don't get to know the person very well. But in this case, I think that the reader gets to really know what an amazing human, normal, natural person Jacob was.
Absolutely. Well, I want to take a moment to give my disclaimer the way that I try to for every guest. And that is, as we start to talk a little bit more about your book, my viewers know what I'm about to say. If you want to know how the story ends, you gotta buy the book. Of course, we're not going to give it all away here on the show today, but I do want to ask, why was it important for you to write about Jacob? There are so many different uh, personalities that you could have chosen from scripture. Why him?
Well, when I was growing up, being brought up in a Christian family, I I I absorbed and I accepted um, the story of Jacob the way that I heard it from the pulpit, heard it from my parents, and so on and so forth. And I thought that he betrayed his father, he betrayed his brother, he was devious, he was selfish. When I got to actually reading the book and they're thinking, well, what was he faced with? What was he faced with? Um, I became inspired by him. I thought I'm going to write his story the way I really think what a wonderful man he was, because he was very close to God, and he was blessed by God. And I wanted people to get to know this man more than what they got to know him in the Bible. He was
Mhm.
generous.
And
He was sorry. He was generous. He was kind. He was strong. He's resilient. He was brave. He was all of these things.
I find that so many times as adults, we need to go back and be reintroduced to the persons that we've found in the various stories that we were taught as children, as opposed to having just this childlike, very simple understanding of who these people were. We find that as adults, when we really get to read scripture and really delve deeper into the intricacies, and things become revealed to us, and we see how much of an adult they were in any given situation. And you are so right there. Now, when it comes to reading your book, I have a firm belief that authors present their work in a way in which we as the reader should consume it, meaning read chapter one before chapter two. But I do know that many people, and some of my favorite people included, are roulette readers. They like to pick up the book and start anywhere. Some like to start with the last page and see if it intrigues them or not. What's the best way to read your book? Should we start with page first and read through last, or does that matter?
I would suggest that you start from chapter one. My book it's actually it's a nice size. It's quite a large size. Every chapter starts with a verse of scripture, which summarizes what happens in that chapter. There are illustrations, Canaanite images, Egyptian images on every title page in color. So start from the front, you start the beginning, and we do have flashbacks. So to follow the life of Jacob, we start at chapter one, and it's a happy ending with a lot of trauma and and aggression and fighting and wars and loves and all of that inside.
Oh my goodness. I tell people all the time, when you read scripture, you will find that they present the same way then as they would now. People are people, right? So there's going to be highs and lows and surprises and things that you thought were going to happen and things that you didn't think were going to happen. So I love that you have included that, and I do want to talk a little bit more about that, but it is time for us to take a very short break. But before we do, can you remind everyone what is the title of this book? How can we stay in contact with you? And of course, if someone wants to pick up a copy, how do they do that?
Dreams Can Come True, the story of Jacob. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, they can contact my publisher, Sweet Spy Literature Management. Get the link.
All righty, everyone. Of course, you know the book is available on Amazon or wherever books are sold. We'll be back right after this.
There's something I need to tell you. This relationship isn't working. It isn't good for me. I'm breaking up with you.
It's not me, it's you. I became dependent on you. And you were always there for me, even when I was at my worst. But I didn't realize the damage you were doing. You created a toxic environment. Not just for me, but others too. You were suffocating me.
We're just no longer compatible. Also, there's one more thing. I met someone else.
I'm respected in public. I'm making friends. I feel like I can breathe again.
That's how I deserve to be treated.
我们之间结束了。
तुम फिर से कभी नहीं मुझे दुख दोगे।
Ni siquiera te necesito.
Parce que j'ai une autre option.
And it's a healthy relationship.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark TV. Now, I love that you are writing a book about a particular character, a particular person in the Bible that most people feel that they are already familiar with. But someone may be asking the question, but Jesus has come and returned to heaven. I thought we were in the New Testament, or we've moved into a modern time. We know that the Old Testament is still important. New Testament is important as well. Did you have, how did you come to the determination of which perspective to write from? How did you choose Old Testament versus New Testament?
I think the catalyst was because of my Hebrew studies. I joined the Israel Institute of Biblical Studies, and I've been studying Hebrew, the language, and I had courses like Torah, geography, and other courses relative to understanding the Bible. And I did some New Testament studies as well.
And it's I think for people that matters too, they're really going to appreciate that answer. I think most of the people that I am around, we have an appreciation for both. We understand that one may have been in a certain time period and another isn't a certain time period, but there's still lessons to learn to help us be the best that we can be in our faith. Now, with the way that you present the story, of course, without calling any particular name there, you say that some of the reviews have been given on your book. Folks are saying that your books remind them of a very popular series that's available out there on a streaming service. How does it feel to know that people are equating your work to that very well done popular series?
It's very exciting. Because when you're an author, you don't know, particularly in this new genre, which I call biblifiction, fiction based on fact, you don't know what people's response is going to be. Do they like the way I write? Do they like the stories? Is it interesting? Is it exciting? So when I get those kind of comparisons, it's very encouraging.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have to say, I have enjoyed the series as well. So it brings you back, and that's what I really like. And I find that authors that really put themselves in the writing. I don't mean their personal story necessarily, but they are passionate about what they're sharing with their reader. You can feel that in the writing, the care, and the research that has been done to really give the reader an experience. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. Now, one thing that you mentioned earlier is that this book is a part of a series that you have created. And the other is you talk about Joseph. Why was it important to also include Joseph?
Well, Joseph, I was absolutely stunned when I realized the extent to which Joseph became, in terms of he became the number 2 power in Egypt, and at that time Egypt was the most powerful country in the world. So in fact, Joseph was the second most powerful man in the known world. That is some achievement.
I have to agree with you there. And we look at some of the stories that are shared on social media, and the story of Joseph is definitely one of them as well. And people say the same thing, and especially from a place of encouragement. When you think that you have been cast out, or you've been bullied, or you think that no one cares about you, when God has a plan for your life, look at what can happen, even though it may seem like it's going in a particular direction. Boy, can God turn things around. So I love that you chose to include him as well. Now, when it comes to reading that book, and I want to make sure that the readers understand as well, does that matter how you read? Should we start with page first? Can we start anywhere? Reader's choice? Tell us, does it matter?
I think it does. You see, the reader will come across Joseph in the first book, in the story of Jacob. And in the story of Jacob, Joseph is growing up, and he's talking about his dreams, and his brothers are cross with him and stuff like that. So it's a continuum, really, to start from chapter 1 Jacob to the end, and then chapter 1 Joseph to the end. I think it flows better that way.
Absolutely. Like I said, I have found that if we trust the author and read it the way in which you have presented it to us, then we're really able to really gather all that we need to and connect the dots as well and go along on the journey. Well, if you will, I would like to kind of switch gears just a little bit. One of the largest emails, groupings of emails that we get are from our aspiring authors, and they always have questions. So, one question I try to ask of everyone is there something that now that you have gone through the entire process, is there something that you wish you would have known when you first started that you know now that would be that nugget of wisdom that could help an aspiring author?
I think the answer to that question would be linked with my faith. I didn't realize when I started writing the story of Jacob or story of Joseph that I would get so much help from God. And at times I was stuck. What can I write? How will I write this? And then these words came, these stories came, these ideas came, and if I'd known that at the beginning, I would have been much more encouraged, and that's a lesson that I learned through this whole process.
Now, when it comes to the actual writing, while you were still at the very beginning stages of putting pen to paper, if you will, or fingertip to laptop, did the time of day or the atmosphere environment in which you were writing, did that matter? Did you need somewhere quiet? Was it first thing in the morning, late at night? Tell us about the writing process.
My day would start with my devotions, and then I'd come to my computer, and I'd read over some of the things that I'd written before, and then I would sit and think about what was going to happen next. Of course, I came up with a plan right in the beginning, the plan for the book. So I knew the various chapters that I thought I would move through. But no, time of day didn't matter. I have a family. I have family responsibilities. I've got kids, grandkids, 2 children, 3 grandchildren. In fact, Dr. Angela, today is my youngest grandson's birthday. So it's special for 2 reasons. One, I'm meeting you, and second, it's my grandson's birthday. So no, time of day didn't matter. It was just, it is also to do with the story. If there's it's at an exciting point, then I just get in and I just go write and write and write and write and write, and it flows. I think it's more to do with the point of where we are with the story rather than the time of day.
Oh, I like that answer. And I don't think anyone has said that before, that it's not about the time of the day in which you are writing, but the flow, the process of it, how it's coming to you. I like that answer. And on a side note, happy birthday. I am so happy that it is your birthday today. That is so awesome. Please, please, please tell your grandson that I said happy birthday to him as well. So that is so awesome. Thank you for that tidbit there. And I think someone is really going to use that as a nugget, because so many times people say, well, you should write before you get busy, or you should write at the end of the day before you go to bed. But I like how you said, whatever time, that's irrelevant. It's about getting in the flow and allowing it to flow once it does. I will to be a successful author. And when we say someone wants to be successful in any other industry, we have a tendency to say, well, success is a big house, a big car, you're able to travel first class, whatever it is, some material thing. But I'm finding that authors sometimes don't always agree with that answer. What does it mean to you, Barry, to be a successful author?
In both of the books, I dedicate the book to God, giving him thanks for all that he's done for me. So I think as for me to be a successful author means that God will receive the glory, and I have been able to give something back to him in a humble way. That I think is the. I agree with you. Cars, first class trips, not important. Not important. It's the success is for the glory of God. That's my feeling.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love how I think we are trying to make that normalize that in a way and allow the next generation to understand. Don't be distracted by all the other things. Really focus on your craft, focus on the industry, focus on that thing that God has tasked you with, and all the other comforts will come as they come. But when we do the task that we are supposed to do, we find so much joy in doing it like that. So I could not agree with you more. But Barry, I have had such a wonderful time speaking with you today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with my viewers, sharing your book with them as well. But before I let you go, one last time, can you remind everyone what is the title of this book? Where can we get a copy? And if someone wants to stay in contact with you, what's the best way to do that?
The title of this book is Dreams Can Come True, The Story of Jacob. You can contact me through my publisher, Sweet Spire Literature, and you can obtain the book on Amazon or your local bookshop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again for spending some time with me here today on Daily Spark TV.
Thank you so much, Dr. Angela. It's been a real pleasure.
It has been. Thank you. And viewers, thank you for spending some time with us here today as well. I hope that we had enlightened, inspired, and empowered you again today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone.